Morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Dean Cora from Visayas. So praise God, we are still alive. We are COVID-free. We are happy and we are blessed. And welcome to this webinar, a series of a webinar organized by the Association of Deans of the Philippine Colleges of Nursing and in partnership with the very supportive and generous C&E Publishing Company. So we are blessed to be able to attend this national conference of this magnitude in the comforts of our homes, devoid of blazers, devoid of makeup. But the drawback, we have no opportunity to travel to Manila for free, and on the side to shop. So thanks or no thanks to this COVID pandemic. Today, we are blessed with the presence of more than 2,500 registered participants all over the country, composed of dynamic deans of nursing, level coordinators, and empowered faculty members. We are doubly blessed that we have highly esteemed professional regulatory board of nursing zooming in with us, headed by the chair of the PR Bond, Chair Glenda Arquesa, and her members. We'd also like to acknowledge the virtual presence of the Technical Committee on Nursing Education, chaired by Dr. Marilyn Lorenzo and her members. Here with us, joining the webinar, is also the PNA past president and current Board of Governor representing CAR, the prolific researcher, the nursing welfare advocate, good friend Dr. Castor Palaganas. And joining us also are the hardworking ADPCN officers, headed by Dean Grace and then Edna. You really work hard for this. And the board of directors. We also have with us some CHED regional directors, CHED supervisors, and some guests. Last Monday, we were overwhelmed by top-notch speakers. Dr. Lynn Lorenzo vividly described the challenges brought about by this flexible learning, some CHED initiatives, directions, and collective aims. We also had interactive sessions with the TCNE and the Board of Nursing on how best the curriculum be implemented and issues on the implementation of salary grade 10 and the date of the board of exam and some issues concerning the DR and OR cases. Dr. Greg also elucidated on the principles, the 4.0 principles of flexible learning, parang 4.0 fire. On redesigning the curriculum, redesigning the courses, and the faculty as instructional coach. Instructional coach, hindi lang volleyball coach. Today, we will be excited to hear an array of equally competent and stimulating speakers. According to Nexos Kazenzaki, ideal teachers are those who use themselves as bridges over which they invite their students to cross, while they then having facilitated their crossing, joyfully collapse, encouraging them to create bridges of their own. Here to talk on preparing learning packets, modules for the flexible learning in the related learning experience is the former Dean of Nursing and now the Vice President for Academic Affairs of the Cebu Normal University, Dr. Daisy Palompon. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all put our hands together and welcome Dr. Daisy Palompon.
Thank you so much, Diora, for that introduction. And at this onset, I'd like to greet our participants. Very good morning. And also our ADPCN national officers and the rest of the members for organizing this very, very successful and relevant webinar related to module development and flexible learning, particularly on the related learning experience. I'd also like to recognize the presence of our Technical Committee of Nursing Education, the Board of Nursing, and our distinguished leaders in the different nursing organizations who are here with us. I'm not considering myself as an expert on module development, but my advocacy as a teacher and a nursing educator is basically for me to share what was also trained to us, what I learned from our senior faculty members and our trainings in the university. So at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I would like everybody to be more comfortable wherever you are while we start or as we start with this presentation. So I'll be discussing to or interacting with you related to developing self-learning module for flexible learning in the related learning experience. Now, to start with, as mentioned by Dean Cora, I am connected with Cebu University, my alma mater, and I'm now serving as the Vice President for Academic Affairs. And as such, this particular advocacy of training our faculty members for the new normal has been our frontline reframing practices of the university. And that's why this topic has become a part of my life since we started with the ECQ sometime in March. I'd like to make a disclaimer that this presentation is intended for educational purposes only and do not replace any independent professional judgment. And information herein are taken from the different literatures, the different presentations from my colleagues in the university, and these are also cited in the reference section of this presentation. Okay, now let's move into the current reality that we are in. The question is, why is ADPCN conducting this particular webinar session? Which is, we have to make ourselves realize that the pandemic or COVID-19 has caused a lot of unprecedented disruptions academically. And more than a health crisis, this has also become a challenge in the educational sector because this has also affected us in many things. It has become an educational crisis as well. And so with this, colleges and universities are called to be resilient and ready to ensure academic continuity. Sometime in March, we were thinking that by June or July, all this nightmare will probably end and we can go back to the face-to-face interaction with our colleagues and prepare for the next school year. But however, we have to realize
statement
or this current reality with us even at this point. And with these realities, what are the challenges that we have to recognize? And these challenges are anchored on the fact that there are things that we can no longer be done or we cannot no longer be doing in our regular classroom or related learning experiences activities. Some of this would be, at this time, face-to-face interaction is discouraged, so we cannot go into hospital or community immersion with our students. There will no more be bedside care for our students, for their respective patients. We probably will be missing about home visitations when we go into community health nursing. And as teachers, as clinical instructors, we will not be there to make actual physical observations of the activities being done by our students and rating them in terms of their competencies that they have developed in the process of their clinical immersion. So there will also be no more in-person observation in the hospital or in the community. So these particular challenges are things that we have to look into. And what could not be done at this time is not only putting pressure on us, but we are also encouraged to look into these call of the current times. We are asked to continue providing inclusivity and equity in education, but at the same time, we need to prioritize safety and sanity of our learners as well as our faculty members. And at the same time, we have to always remember that in the process of providing continuity of education, we have to always have OBE in our front line. And so we have to focus on the learner, even if there are changes that we have to do. And at the same time, we need to empower our educational institutions. So with all these challenges, with all these realities, with all these pressing issues that are put in front of us, behind us, at our sides, in all academic institutions, not also for institutions offering colleges of nursing. Let's just try to listen to an inspiration from Greg Kincaid when he said, no matter how much falls on us, we keep plowing ahead. And that's the only way to keep the roads clear. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason why we have this webinar, because that means to say that the business is considered as a serious thing, the business of promoting quality education despite these realities and challenges has to be addressed, has to be overcome by all nursing educators, because this is now the new reality, and this is now the new normal. So what will be our response? And I think in the first webinar session, it was very clearly presented that our response for these current challenges would be flexible learning. Allow me just to review what flexible learning is all about. And I highlighted this type of approach when it says, according to the Australian National Training Authority, that flexible learning is a learner-centered approach to education, and it covers different modes of deliveries of learning. And what are these modes of deliveries of learning? We have distance education, we have mixed mode delivery, we have e-learning, online learning, and this FL is considered as self-paced. In other words, if before we tell our students that on the second you have to submit your nursing care plan, at this point in time, we have to give them flexibility, because in the 40 hours of the related learning experience in a week, for example, if that's your program in your nursing curriculum in your institution, we allow our students to navigate within the 40 hours period on his or her own. That's what we call as self-paced. And when we say FL is self-directed learning, that means to say the students will be left on their own. They will be the ones controlling themselves, and they will also be the ones reading and understanding what are these activities, what are these learning that they need to look into and to imbibe in the process of flexible learning. So in the flexible learning, one of the basic response as well, which is very applicable to us in the colleges of nursing, is what we call as module. But before we proceed to the module, our question would be, in the flexible learning, why are we imbibing flexible learning in nursing education? Why are we looking into the different modes of delivery of learning? It's because we need to consider our learners category. So according to Dr. Fermin, there are 3 categories of learning. So in the category 1, these are those who have no internet connectivity and no gadgets to make use of at home. Then category 2 are those with limited connectivity. They may have an unstable internet, but they have internet access, and they have at least one gadget, a mobile device with messaging capability at home. And the third one, these are the blessed categories. The category 3, these are those learners with complete connectivity, stable internet access, and they also have gadgets or mobile devices which they can make use of at home while doing the flexible learning program that we offer to them. So one of the things that will be addressed in the flexible learning, considering the learners category that we have, would be another response, which is very, very useful. And I find it personally very useful, the self-learning module. According to Russell in 1974, module is an instructional package dealing with a single conceptual unit of subject matter. I'd like to emphasize this because when the first time that we discussed about module, the first thing that comes into the minds of my colleagues would be, I will be making module for the whole semester, and that's a very long and that's a very tall order for me. There are so many contents, there are so many activities that I have to do. Please take note, when we make our instructional package, when we make our module, it could be done in a single conceptual unit of subject matter. So by unit, we do it one step at a time, so that we will not be too overwhelmed with whatever activities that we will be doing in the process of preparing for our next semester. So they are designed to help the students accomplish well-defined objectives. So we cannot just put any activity there. We have to self-learning module. And this also allowed the learner to learn at their pace and acquire knowledge, skills, and attitudes in the absence of a teacher. And that is one of the things that we have to remember, that at this point in time, there's a possibility that some learners cannot be with the teachers. Good for those who are in the category 3, wherein they are blessed with internet activity and with the gadgets. They can do Zoom classes, they can do learning management platform, they can do video conferencing with their teachers. But for other learners who do not have this luxuries, we have to really look into this capacity so that our module will be very relevant to our future learners. Okay, now, in this session, I'd like to share with you my learning map, or our learning map. This is actually the objective of this session, so that we will be guided in the process of doing the rest of the presentation. So the participants, you are expected to explain the steps in developing a learning module. There will be many steps in learning modules. There are different styles of learning module, but I will introduce to you a very simplified way so that we will not be overwhelmed. And anyway, you can creatively develop your own module, as long as you will not be lost with the essentials of a module. And then ways of options on how to develop learning modules for related learning experience. Okay, now the big question that we have to ask at this point in time is, yes, we know what is a module. Yes, we know what is a flexible learning. But the question is, how can I make an effective self-learning module? And that is our first step now, to discuss about the steps in developing an effective learning module. So I'd like to share with you the steps on how to design and develop module according to Taa and Macaldi in 2016, which I also So there are 5 steps that we can make use of. So conduct research and the requirements of the self-learning module. I'm going to explain each of the steps as we go along the way with a sample presentation of the module I made for this session. Then we assess project risk. Ay, meron palang project risk that we have to look into. Parang quality assurance talaga ang step niya. Design the module and plan the content. Develop the module. And then, is it enough to just develop it? No, hindi po tayo magtatapos doon. We need to evaluate the design and the development process. It's a continuing process. We cannot say that the first module that we make is the best module. No, I don't think so. It's a continuing process. And so let's move into the first step now. So conduct research on the module requirements. So what are these steps under conducting research? What are the things that we need to research on? The first thing that we need to research on is, ano pong type na module ang gagamitin ko? Type of module. Now, there are 2 major things, or the 2 major approaches in designing a module. One of which is the content module, wherein we just more or less lift some of the information from the textbook, from our references, and transfer it to our module. In the content module, there will be no personal interaction between the teacher who is making the module and the students who are using the module. The other one is the interactive module. The interactive module requires that in the process of developing the module, the way the module is developed is something like you're talking to the learners. And in this particular presentation, because it's related learning experience, I opted to go for developing an interactive module. Kasi kailangan natin makipag-usap sa estudyante natin. Kasi wala tayo dun eh. So it's through the module that we discuss things with them. So Another is the characteristics of target user. Sino po ang bibigyan natin ng module? Para kanino po si module na gagawin natin? So ito, yung sample module ko is for the NCM 103 class. This is basically for level 3 students. Now, knowing this, ano pong dapat nating ma-reminded or ma-review when we talk about NCM 103 RLE and level 3? We have to take note that yung estudyante natin may prerequisite na siya or may previous competency na siya on the nursing process, on the basic nursing procedure. So in short, when we go into level 3, when we go into NCM 1, more or less the process is already there. There is already, naka-plus po yung basic nursing procedures and competencies that we need. It's just that we need to go into the specific and the specialization. What are the learning needs of the users? Again, go back to the category of your users. Ano po yung mga available nila na mga gadgets? Can they be able to go in online module, or they would like to go into remote learning module or the offline module? So ipapasok yun sa research on the module requirement that you will be developing. Then the learning environment, saan po sila ngayon? Anong klaseng area the students are living? So are they in the rural area? Are they in the urban area? Pag rural pa rin na nasa bundok talaga yung area nila. So research learning environment, how did we do this? I'd like to share with you that in our practice, what we did is we went into survey and then integrated po sa enrollment process ng university is that the student will, because naka-online po yung enrollment namin, papasok doon kung anong choice of learning mode ng estudyante. Kung gusto niya ng full digital or online, kung gusto niya ng digital copy lang ng module, or kung gusto niya ng hard copy of the module, then those modules will be delivered to their provinces through couriers or through a team of faculty and staff who will be going around the provinces to distribute in different centers na contact namin. So all these are being researched on and prepared on. Then the ethical and legal considerations. Ano po yung ipapasok mo doon sa module mo? Take note that we have plagiarism concerns, we have copyright issues, so you have to be very full on this part. So the next step, pag tapos na tayo dito, punta tayo sa next step niya. So yung next step niya is now to assess the project risks. Ano po tong project risk na to? So first we identify the risk. So ano pong mga risk na dapat titingnan natin? So ano po bang gagawin natin sa module? Would it be teacher-focused or student-focused yung module natin? Kasi it varies eh. Pag teacher-focused, talagang si teacher yung focus, yung anong gusto ni teacher na gawin, yun ang ipapasok niya sa module. Pero pag student-focused, ano dapat yung perspective ng student ang nandun sa module mo? So, anong risk ang titingnan natin? So, if it is teacher-focused, is it possible that the student will not really understand and probably will not feel engaged on the module activity that you're doing? Pero pag student-focused, parang feel ni student na ako talaga yung pinag-uusapan ni teacher dito. Ako talaga yung kinakausap ni teacher dito. So in terms of engagement, in terms of success rates of the module compliance, mataas siya. So we need to determine the likelihood of consequence of the risk, and then make decisions about whether the risk is acceptable or not, and then treat the risk if unacceptable. So another risk is content-focused or experience-focused. So yung experience ko po in making module, dalawa po. There are two things that I was able to go through. When I made the RLE module, sabi ko, hindi po pwedeng content-based si RLE kasi experience-based yung mga activities, the self-learning activities ng mga students. So, kailangan kong gumawa ng experience-based. But when I made the module on TFN, Theoretical Foundation in Nursing, I focused on the nursing theories based on human needs. Yun yung pinaka-first module na ginawa ko. I tried to go into experience focus, kaya lang hindi masyado kasi yung focus niya is talagang downloading of information for level 1. So ang ginawa ko, content focus pero may pagka-experience focus. Saan ko ginuha yung experience focus? Doon sa self-learning activities na parang As a student, how do you relate to this particular theory? So ginawa kong ganun yung module. So yun yung decision making na i-consider mo in assessing the project risk. Another is, would you go for online activities or offline mode? Again, we have to make our module administrable, useful, and relevant to the learner. So pag gagawa ka ng module na purely online yung mga references niya, the problem actually is baka hindi niya ma-access yung mga resources. Kaya we go back to step 1, research is very important. Offline mode, wala pong problema si offline mode in terms of accessing kasi nandyan siya lahat sa module mo. Pero yung problema mo naman, if it talks about procedure, paano makikita ni student yung steps of the procedure? Although may mga offline module tayong nakikita na by picture yung mga steps na binibigay. So, dun yung balancing of the equation that you need to look into. And then the question of too much or too little, kasi baka sabi mo, kulang pa to. So, yung isang module mo, gumawa ka ng isang unit, 100 pages na siya. Ask yourself, is it worth 100 pages talaga? Or baka tinransfer lang po natin yung content ng textbook sa module natin. And then the student will not anymore be in love in doing the activity. So, again, success rate is very low. If it's also too little, the student will have to find ways na saan ba ko kukuha ng definition of this type of concept, hindi naman nakalagay dito sa module. So yun yung other things that we need to consider. Another is, how can I be understood? In the process of developing the module, you have to be very careful. Paano mo yung pagsasalita mo dun sa module? Is it understandable or not? Then the ethical legal considerations will also be part of the risk. So we need to monitor and review the risk. Okay, the third step is design the module and plan the content. So based on research, generate a range of design options. So yung sinare ko kanina na we did some survey and then we analyzed the risk. So yun papasok na yung design ng module and the planning of the content of your module. Then identify implications of each design. So as I have mentioned, pag ganitong design, online module yung activities ng ilalagay ko dito, anong implication? Availability of or accessibility of the information by the student. Pag purely offline, baka too much information yung maibigay ko. So these are things that we need to look into in designing and planning for the module. And then next, you decide on the design. So itong additional input in designing is that at this point in time, common of the information that we talk about or that we read and hear from presentations on flexible learning is that kung po pwede po minimize the content and focus on the experience. So the learning experience design is very important. The learning experience design is actually, it emanates from design thinking. So in design thinking, hindi naman siya kailangan talaga na estudyante yung idea is really from the student. Pwede naman siyang kumuha. Curating is one thing, the selection of relevant OERs and other content, but the student has to be very good in terms of integrating this information in order to develop and refine the new information or innovations that will come out. Kaya po yung realization ko po dito is that sometimes when we look into learning experience or learning experience design, sometimes it's very important for us to minimize yung mga standardized template, although we are very concerned with the QA naman po, but if the student can be allowed to be creative in their output, mas makikita pa natin kung ano yung extent ng learning ng student natin, then we go for it. Now you might ask, ma'am, ano ba yan? Learning experience? Gusto mo learning experience? RLE nga, hindi nga tayo makapunta ng hospital or community to do the actual experience. So when we talk about the experience, it's not the experience that we care for the patient, but we focus on the learning experience, the way we introduce the activity, the different as that we have, i-integrate natin yung learning experience ng estudyante. Kasi sabi naman ni Albert Einstein, learning is experience, everything else is just information. So focus the experience of the student. So you have the input, you have the content, but in the learning task of your student, pwede naman siyang gawan mo siya ng ibang way na draw out siya from his or her own experience rather than kukunin niya pa sa book yung answer niya. So yun yung ibig sabihin ng learning experience. Then, in designing the module, develop an outline or prototype for the learning resource and confirm with the client. So, ito yung parts of the module that are basically under TAA and Macalde's text book or reference na sinabi natin dito, the parts of the module should have the following. Although, pwede mo siyang i-tweak as long as the essentials are there. So you need to have the module overview. So ano itong, we will be passing the module overview. Then itong desired learning outcomes, papasok siya doon. The learning contents, the self-learning activities, the evaluation of learning outcomes, and the extension of learning. So ano itong ginawa ko on the right side? Itong dark greenish area. Ang ginawa ko po, di ba sabi natin kanina, pwede ka namang mag-design. And then depending on the research that you have done and depending on the implications of the line that you have outlined. So ang ginawa ko po, I was thinking, ano ba yung related learning experience para sa akin if I am the learner? So yung ginawa ko po is that when I thought about RLE, ginawa ko siyang parang learning journey ng isang estudyante. Parang, hey, we start today, and then we go along the way together. Ako yung teacher mo, ikaw yung learner ko. So yun yung ginawa ko na tinweak ko in a creative manner yung basic parts of the module. So yung first is, nandyan pa rin si module overview. The desired learning outcome, kasi sometimes intimidating on the part of the student pag sinabi mong DLO, yan na naman si OBE. So ginawa ko siyang learning map, but still integrating the characteristics. It's still the same with DLO. Then the learning contents, di ba when we travel, we take the first step. So ito yung first input na gagawin natin sa first step. Then the self-learning activities are the activities that will put in depth information, parang ini-immerse mo na si students sa learning experience. So ginawa ko siyang deep dive. And then on the last part, or the second to the last part, will be the evaluation of learning outcome. So pag sasabihin kong evaluation, ayan na naman, nag-evaluate naman si teacher. So ginawa kong in the process of the learning journey, let's try to pause for a while and check, are we on the right track? So yung destination check yung nilagay ko. And the last part is the extension of learning. When we say extension of learning, ito yung mga further applications, further enhancement of learning. So sabi ko sa RLE kasi, marami ka ng self-learning activities ipapasok doon. A lot of activities that are being done. So para naman magpupos si student and mag-seek in talaga kung ano yung experience niya, ginawa ko siyang reflection time. Although in your end, pwede mo na siyang talagang i-tweak ng kung ano yung choice mo. Okay, so the fourth one is we develop now the module. So in the development of the module, we create the content in accordance with the agreed design. So meron kang design, nandun na siya si DLO mo. So gagawin mo na yung content niya. And then if your creative mind is telling you na it's a learning journey, so ipapasok mo din doon kung ano yung content na ilalagay mo doon. Then curate. You take out relevant information from the internet or open educational resources, the OERs, para wala tayong problem with copyrights, or modify existing learning materials or develop a new one. It's up to you. Pwede ka talagang gumawa ng sayo. As long as it's based on relevant and on relevant principles and philosophies. Hindi ka nawawala sa basic nursing concepts natin. Establish mechanisms for reviewing work in progress. Pwede mo naman siyang gawing personal review of the output. So in a day-to-day basis, pwede mo siyang balikan from the very beginning. Then papasok na naman yung idea, hindi para ganito dapat. Para if I am the student, iba yung expectation ko na dapat nandito to. So in other words, in the process of developing the module, we don't take out the possibility or the big consideration that developing the module should be focused on the learner. Ilalagay mo yung self mo at the perspectives of the learner. Kasi pag yung perspectives mo is that of the teacher, magkakaproblema po talaga tayo when it comes to how this is being perceived by the learner. Kasi sometimes, if you are teacher perspective ang ginagamit mo, feeling mo, understood mo lahat. Alam mo, naintindihan mo lahat yung nilagay mo sa module. Sasabihin mo, ay, very easy naman yan. Ito lang dapat gawin, ito lang dapat gawin. On the part of the learner, remember, we are not there to guide the learner. Sasabihin ng learner, ano bang ibig sabihin ni teacher nito? Hindi ko naman nakita ang gusto niya na gagawin ko to dito. So, in other words, put yourself in the perspective of the learner when you develop the module. And you will be able to improve. Siguro on the first development, teacher perspective yung lalabas. As you go along with the review of the work in progress, ipasok mo yung student perspective mo doon. Then review the content and the design against client requirement and relevant criteria. Modify the design. In fact, I started doing it when Dean Lacanaria called me up last week na magpipresent. Sabi ko, it's not once that I redesign. Even this morning, last night, I was tweaking the module that I was making para maintindihan talaga on the perspectives of the learner. Modify the design, the content where necessary. And then, pagtapos na si module, hindi po tayo magtatapos doon. Okay na to, tapos na si module, ibibigay ko na to sa student. Hindi po, finalize the output and secure the approval. Now, ano pong gagawin? Pagtapos na si module, pwede ka namang mag-create ng isang committee within your college. Like in our case, we call that as the Instructional Materials and Development Committee. Sila yung mag-present ka doon ng output mo for critiquing purposes. Di po tayo, the purpose of which is not to humiliate the person presenting, but basically on the perspective of, if I am the one doing it, my perspective would be, kayo yung learners, mga critic, yung committee will be the learners, I am the teacher. Tell me kung anong feedback na dapat gagawin ko para mas maintindihan ni student yung presentation ng module ko. So, and then secure the approval. In other words, you'll be given the go signal to implement the module. Okay, now I'm going to present now the parts of the module with a sample module that I am making. Okay, so, or I made actually for this presentation. So, basically, you will have your preliminaries. Nandun pa rin yung title ng module mo, and then the course name, where you are going to implement this module, the level offering, the academic year, and the semester where this module will be implemented. And then, kasi RLE ito, so ilagay mo dito, clinical area of assignment. Bakit ilalagay natin? Hindi naman tayo magpupunta sa hospital to do the immersion. Ang purpose ko lang dito is, I'd like the student to imbibe, kahit lang virtually, kahit lang imaginary, na when you answer the module, nandun ka talaga, present ka doon sa ward, nandun ka sa ward, nag-duty ka. So yung mindset niya, parang pre-prepare mo na nandun talaga siya sa hospital. And then the date of clinical exposure, kasi meron naman tayong RLE plan, so kailan ito dapat mangyayari, and then the number of hours. Bakit ilalagay po ito? Kasi, so student will be guided, kasi self-paced ito eh. And then sasabihin, yeah, you can do these modules anytime you want to do it, but take note, may deadline po tayo. So, and then supposedly this module will be done within 40 hours. So para at least alam ni student na, okay, I'm going to work within these 40 hours as soon as I'm ready. Then, the next part is the module overview. Sa module overview, ano po ilalagay natin? So, what the module is all about, what is coverage or the focus of the module, the processes or steps used in the module, and what users will expect per part of the module. So, ito yung ginawang module overview ko. Diniscuss ko lang po dito sa estudyante that what is the nursing profession, and that the NCM 103, and that for this module, we'll be providing nursing care to adult and elderly clients with medical conditions related to oxygenation. And remember, sabi ko nga, having gone through the theoretical inputs in the care of clients with oxygenation, the next step that you need to learn is on the application of these principles and techniques in nursing care. So for this 40-hour related experience, you will be catered to a flexible clinical learning experience through this module. Remember, it might not be a substitute for the actual clinical experience, but this can help you navigate through your patient care experiences in this alternative learning platform. What do you expect from this module? Ito na po. Ilalagay mo po kung anong parts ng module para alam niya po kung ano yung mga parts ng module. You have the learning map, you have to take let's take the first step, deep dive, let's call for a destination check, and reflection time. The next is the learning map. Ano po si learning map ng module mo? The learning map actually is the desired learning outcome. And then you will say, gagawa ako ng bagong desired learning outcome. Para po sa akin, hindi na po. You look into the syllabus of NCM 103 that you have made last year when you prepared for this school year. Then you pick out the DLO for RLE activities. Diba sa syllabus natin, nandun naman yung DLO, and then saan mo i-deliver ang DLO na to? Doon ba sa theoretical, sa lecture? Doon ba sa clinical skills area? Or doon ba sa RLE component? So yun lang gagamitin mo as basis. Then the DLO will be your compass. It will be your guide as the basis of the learning content and the self-learning activities to be included in the module. Wag po kayong mawawala. Si DLO will always be our guide until the end of our module. And this will also be the basis for assessment measures. So even the DLO will dictate the design that we are going to make with our module. Okay, depend on the type of learning outcome that you have. So if it's only comprehension, analysis, application, synthesis, or evaluation. So yun yung titingnan po natin. I'm not going to go into that because I'm only given an hour. So learning map, ito yung sample learning map na ginawa ko for the 40-hour related learning exposure. You're expected to utilize the nursing process, perform a holistic assessment, utilize assessment information to formulate patient-centered care plan, apply bioethical concepts or principles in the care of the clients, document the care rendered to assigned patient in the simulated healthcare record accurately. Okay, now, with your learning map in place, we are now going to take the first step of our learning journey. So sabihin mo kay student, you had your discussion on the process of oxygenation from your concepts in anatomy and physiology and to nursing procedures addressing oxygenation concerns. You started knowing about pathophysiology, so expected kasi natin na i-expose natin siya sa medical ward, taking care of problems or clients with problems in oxygenation pagtapos na yung theoretical input natin. So let's have a review of these concepts and see how much we recall. So let's try to check, parang activity lang po, para at least si student parang ma-at-home sa module mo. Please check if the complaints of the patient involves oxygenation process and cross it if it's not. So pwede naman kayong mag-answer dyan on your own. Patient A has loose bowel movement. Ano po ito? Check or X? So the answer is X. Okay. Patient B felt dizzy because she has low hemoglobin count. That would be a check. Okay. So patient C had to rush to ER since experiencing severe anginal pain. So that related to cardiac malfunction. So it would be check. Sorry, parang na iba yung yung presentation ko. Dapat supposedly that's number 4, the X. Difficulty walking due to rheumatoid arthritis, that's X. It's not related to oxygenation problem. Then last patient is difficulty breathing, and that would be a check. So at least may anchor the student mo. Ang next question mo is, what do you think is the basis in selecting the cases pertaining to oxygenation problems? So lalabas din yung idea niya. Yung anginal patient, bakit yung asthmatic patient ang lumabas, bakit yung may anemia, yung lumabas na oxygenation problem is related to this. So ipasok lang ni student yan dyan sa module mo. Then you discuss, now you start discussing, ano po ba yung oxygenation disorders? Para at least si student, meron na siyang mga guide, when he starts to take care of the virtual patient. Basic to every care that you provide to your patient is the utilization of the nursing process. So you reorient them of the nursing process. You have always been doing assessment, planning of care, providing nursing interventions, and evaluating the care provided. And the next one would be you are now on duty in the medical ward. So isi-situate mo na siya sa virtual reality niya. So in this 40-hour duty, ito yung dapat mong gawin. So vital signs monitoring, bedside care. So the usual thing that you do. Kaya lang, modular lang yung ginagawa natin. So ita-transfer mo lang yung clinical plan mo dito sa module. And then i-present mo lang in a way na you are talking to the student in a paragraph form. So in your provision of nursing care, you are reminded of the following behavior. So yung depende sa PRS nyo kung anong nakalagay doon. Professional behaviors. Ay ma'am, mami-measure ba yan natin sa module? Pwede natin when you have activities to be integrated. So communication, clinical decision-making, caring intervention, teaching, learning, and collaboration. Then, as you start with this module, you are free to consult and coordinate with your assigned clinical instructor. Paki-assure naman si student ng ganun. Kasi he or she will be on his own or her own. He or she needs somebody to anchor, to be the guide. Kasi yung parents nila, pag hindi doctors or nurses, walang magagawa yan. So be sure to assure them. Be sure to get the email address of your CI, contact number for collaboration and assistance. Then you continue motivating the student. Just keep doing, you can do it. Okay. Then we move on now to the self-learning task, the deep dive. So you are now ready to meet your patient for this clinical experience. So ipapasok mo na dito yung clinical case scenario mo. The history of the patient, anong situation ni patient, anong diagnosis ni patient, which is myocardial infarction in this case. Ito na yung mga laboratory results niya, yung mga radiologic exams niya, nandyan yan lahat, yung ano yung management ng patient, ano yung monitoring and progress of the patient para alam ni student kung anong nangyari kasi hindi naman tayo hindi siya mag-i-imagine na gagawa ba ako ng monitoring on my own na hindi ko alam kung anong nangyari. So given na yan yung simulation case scenario. Now, in this case, the case scenario that I used was taken from an open educational resource, Harvard Medical School on simulation case book. I got the information from there. Yung sinasabi natin, you curate, you modify according to nursing perspective siya. Then the deep dive, you can also integrate here some of the case scenarios that can be accessed online kung may online or offline activities ka. So you can make use of this. There are the references. These are the links. Yung free clinical simulation scenarios, group simulation scenarios, pwede mo siyang i-ask, allowable siya, but as long as you cite them in your module. Okay. After the deep dive, so parang doon na siya, ini-immerse niya yung patient niya, sino si patient niya. Let's now call for a destination check. So to immerse yourself in the care management of the patient, let's do some detailed description of your patient care task. So using the case scenario assigned to you, you're expected to perform the following. So conduct history taking. So you use your institutional form. You can do that. Develop a concept map of your patient's conditioning. Nilagay ko si concept map because I find it important to develop the critical reasoning. Then formulate a patient-centered care plan. Use your NCNU care plan style, depende sa institution niyo. So ito yung sample na concept map na pwede mong ipagawa sa student. And then I adopted it from Pensacola State College under the ADN Clinical Resources. It's an OER. The other is prior to administering the patient's medication, that's part of the care of the patient. So you need to do your drug study. And then in your 5-day duty, you're required to document your care for 3 days. So meron kang FDAR kasi yung ginagamit ng hospital where we are affiliating and where the students are exposed to. So yung daily documentation of care nila is using the FDAR. So pwede mong gawin kung ano yung institutional format nyo. Okay, part of which is you have to inform the student paano ka namin i-grade kung graded siya. Pero kung hindi naman siya graded, you can put it here that all these activities are for purposes of learning and does not require any equivalent grade. Pero kung may grade siya, ito yung sample grade ma-share ko sa inyo. So it's the patient and physical assessment, 30 points, that's 20%. So sasabihin mo sa amin siguro, paano mo i-compute yung number of hours kung nag-fail siya ng submission of 1 or 2 of the requirements. Pwede mong kunin sa proportion of the weight out of the 40 hours at the 20% na hindi niya submit. So those are the number of hours na credited lang within that time that he or she is answering the module. Other options, you can have the PRS here or the clinical case study and you give your equivalent rubrics for rating that. Okay, so then let's go back in the destination check. Let's go back to your learning map kasi importante ito kung na-reach ba natin yung destination natin. So the learning map says utilize the nursing process. Paano natin malalaman kung na-reach natin si destination? So assessment form through the care plan, holistic health assessment, your history and physical assessment, assessment information, the concept map, then nursing interventions, the care plan, and the drug study report, bioethical concepts, it has to be integrated in the care plan because may instruction kasi sila doon na pag gumawa sila ng care plan, integrated are the application of ethical concepts in the care of the patient. Then document the care rendered so the FDAR will measure. So in other words, with the learning map, when we did the learning check, talagang we will be arriving at our learning destination kasi na-address natin si learning map with the different activities and the assessment measures that we have provided for our student or the learner. And the last one would be reflection time. Nag-care siya ng patient oxygenation, patient with oxygenation problems. It's not easy to take care of patient JP who has anginal problem, tapos unstable pa siya yung patient niya, tapos si JP is an executive, ano kayang mangyayari sa family niya, doon na na-integrate sa simulation scenario. So, ma-imbibe yun ni students. So, reflection time will be, you can use this style of reflection time like Kristen Choi of UCLA wrote, nurses are being heralded as life-saving measures on the front lines of the pandemic. They are the glue that holds a patient's healthcare journey together, an art and a science, a heart and a mind. In the challenges that you anticipate in your future clinical immersion and care for your patients, what inspiration can you draw out of this beautiful message? So, i-reflect po niya, nurse na ako. So, ano kaya yung implications ng clinical scenarios, the care of my virtual patient sa akin po as a nurse? Can it motivate me? Can it continue the inspiration and the desire for me to become a nurse? And what type of nurse will I be? Lalabas dito sa reflection time. And at the same time, parang debriefing na po sa reflection time para lalabas na po yung mga concerns niya, yung mga fears, probably lalabas yung fears niya. So you can go do a lot in the reflection time. So other option, you can also ask the student to conduct interviews with other nurses through text, through calls, or if may access siya sa internet, through group chat or something like that. So pwede natin gawin yan. Okay, so the fifth and the last step actually is evaluate the design and development process. So review the design and development process against appropriate evaluation criteria. The question would be, sino po dapat ang best person na mag-i-evaluate sa module mo? Para akin, the best person who should evaluate your module are the learners. Kasi sila yung sila yung gumagamit. They are the users of your module. And they are the best person to tell you kung yung module mo is effective or not. Then you can identify best practices and areas for improvement from the feedback of your students, and then prepare action plan for improvement for future projects. So in our case, the template that we are using in our modules in the university is actually nasa trial and error pa po kami. Depende po sa result ng evaluation. Saan po natin ilalagay sa evaluation? Pwede po natin ilagay sa evaluation at the end part of your module, the module evaluation. So before we move on to the next topic, I would gladly want to listen to your feedback to this module. Remember, interactive module to. Kindly rate each area with a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 as the lowest and 5 as the highest. Content, relevance, comprehensiveness of the content, relevance, clarity, alignment of the assessment activities, and then what are their comments and suggestions. And the last part of the module is, wag mo lang i-end na ganyan-ganyan lang. Para naman po may personal note yung module mo, pwede mo siyang lagyan ng ganito. Congratulations for completing the whole topic. May the learning you derive from this activity contribute to your development as an effective and efficient nurse. Smile and enjoy learning. Para naman malalighten si student na, yeah, I did this. I was able to do it within 40 hours or in less than 40 hours. So these are things that we need to do, and that's the end part of the steps of the module. Additional input lang po would be, we would probably be questioning, what information should I include in the training module or in the module that we are making? According to Minik, may mga categorizations of material siya na binigay when it comes to content of the module. We have the need to know, the nice to know, the less to know, barely irrelevant, and might be used someday. But for our module, I would suggest that we focus on the need to know. Bakit po? In times like this po, we cannot afford to put in the nice to knows and the less nice to knows. We will be making a very bulk module na hindi na active on the part of the learner. So, focus lang po muna tayo sa need to know para direct yung learning ng student natin. And you will be asking, ano pong basis ng need to know ko? Go back to your learning objectives. Yun talaga si learning objective, yung magbibigay ng guide and anchor of what you need to include in terms of design and content of your module. So guidelines on writing modules, I'd like to again cite Taa and Macaldi through the presentation of Dr. Olvido to apply the 4 A's of adult learning. So what are the 4 A's? Nandyan sa module natin si activities, nandyan si analysis, abstraction, and application. Then start with the familiar. Remember, I started with a review of NCM 103 in the theoretical perspective. Bakit nag-start tayo doon? Kasi mas familiar siya doon kasi alam na niya na ito yung focus pala ng module na to on a different perspective kasi hindi na siya theoretical but it's basically more on the RLE perspective. Talk to the learner in a friendly and encouraging dialogue. Don't demand. When you discuss, when you make the module, hindi po pwedeng very demanding yung pagsasalita natin doon sa module na in 10 hours or in 10 minutes, present something like that. We have to be friendly and encouraging. Remember, nag-iisa lang po si learner. Wala po siyang kasama when he or she is going to answer the module. So kailangan talagang a lot of encouragement, even the way we talk through the print that we are to the digital copies of our module. Relate the content to learner's experience and context. Kaya if you notice the learning, the reflection time, nire-relate ko sa experience niya in the care of your patient. Ano pong inspiration na na-learn mo, being leveled off by the statement of Choi from UCLA. So you anchor on the learner's experience. Then give lots of examples. By the way, when we talk about anchor on the learner's experience, kasi sometimes the source of case scenarios that we have are foreign sources, please contextualize na more or less yung scenario mo is realistic ang dating related to the context of the usual clinical area where the students are doing their or were doing their hospital duty. Then give lots of examples if there's a need to do that. Reinforce praise in learners so they don't give up. Again, I will be emphasizing this. Remember, our students are alone in doing this activity. Wala po tayo. At least kung may CI, ang CI yung magsasabi na, sige na, I will be there to discuss it with you along the way. Pero wala ka po doon. So we need to encourage the learners. Praise them at the end of every learning task that they do. Use language that is closer to everyday conversation. Huwag po tayong gumawa ng very highfalutin statements or sentences in the module na to the extent na pagbasa pa lang ni student ng first sentence, kukuha pa siya ng encyclopedia or i-access pa si thesaurus para maintindihan niya kung ano yung ibig sabihin ng statement mo doon or ng word or term na ginamit mo doon. Be simplified as possible. Be understandable as much as possible. Keep sentences short, not more than 20 words. If your sentences are very, very long, parang nagbabasa po si learner, hindi na siya humihina kasi mataas na mataas yung sentences mo. Exercise sensitivity to groups and cultures. Remember, we'll be using case scenarios. Sometimes we probably will be using some case scenarios for Black Hispanics, for Muslim brothers and sisters, for non-Christians or Christians. Parang you have to be very careful as well in using sensitivity or exercising sensitivity in the different scenarios that you'll give. If you're using interactive module, use active rather than passive statements. Para first person, second person ang dating. Then the last is, I would like to appeal to our CIs, don't overload your learners with too many tasks. Look back or go back to your learning map. Go back to your DLO. If one DLO or 2 or 3 DLOs can be addressed with one activity or one learning task, pwede na po yun. And then if 1, 2, or 3 DLOs can be addressed by one